Hey everyone, welcome to Reddit Readout. Today we are checking out People of Reddit. Story 1. More Revenge on Connor. Original post https://reddit.com/r/pettyrevenge/s/v-mytomsknzat. So after what happened with Connor, some of my friends at the restaurant wanted to go after him. But I told them to be smart about what they did because he definitely wasn't worth getting in trouble for since I got away from him before he could do anything. I did warn the other girls about him at the restaurant. Most of them listened and avoided him. A few of them thought he was cute and it was just a misunderstanding on my part, until he tried something similar on another girl from the restaurant. Luckily she was also able to get away from him. But this made some of the guys from the restaurant even more determined to mess with Connor. So about a month after the first incident they struck. Employees could either park behind the restaurant or out front, but way out by the street. Employees went out back for various reasons all the time, but after shift change nobody really went out front until we finished closing. Most people parked out front, and that is where Connor parked his big truck. Two of the guys had the night off work and one of the guys got his hands on some sort of big speed jack. I think it was similar to what they use on race cars. So while Connor was working they removed all 4 of his tires from his big truck and put them in the truck bed and left his truck up on blocks. It was late when Connor finished that night and it was just him and the manager leaving that late. Connor did call the police and they did come to the restaurant. But since nothing had actually been stolen they just kind of laughed at him and asked him who he had $$ at off. Connor ended up calling his dad again. Apparently they had a real bonding moment when his dad had to teach him how to put his tires back on his truck. After this happened Connor started parking his truck around the back of the restaurant. Which lead to the next story. Connor always wore really tight jeans. His jeans were so tight it was uncomfortable for him to put his keys in his pocket. So he always put his keys on the employee's coat rack while at work. So one evening while Connor was working someone took his keys and moved his truck around to the front parking lot and put his keys back where he had left them. When Connor got off work he went to the back parking lot and no big truck was there, so he came back in and called the police to report his truck as being stolen. Well, 2 officers show up to take the report. They get the truck details and one stays to finish the report and the other goes out to check the parking lots to see if there are any other vehicles that have been tampered with or something, and of course he finds the stolen truck parked in the front parking lot. So they just assumed Connor had parked out front and forgot he parked there. And they told him to quit wasting their time. Connor got upset and called the officers a few names and he nearly got arrested. Less than a month later Connor did get arrested while at the restaurant. But that story will have to wait. Story 2. Unintentional petty revenge on my upstairs neighbors. Let's get straight to the point. My upstairs neighbors are inconsiderate douchebags that play loud music, fight loudly and constantly, drop things into my backyard and leave their dog out on their balcony to bark and howl for hours. I'm no angel, however I'm quiet and keep to myself, and it would be nice if that gratitude was reciprocated. But it's only now that I've found my revenge. I like to paint, and one of my favorite mediums is spray paint, which I use outside quite often. I noticed that if my upstairs neighbors were outside when I was spray painting, they would go inside. Then yesterday when I was outside spray painting, I heard the grotesque squawk of the she-beast mutter something about spray cans, and then she went inside, shutting the door and slamming the window shut. Guess who is now more motivated to explore the depths of my creativity with spray paint? Please note that the spray paint I'm using is standard spray paint and I'm using it in a well-ventilated area. No Karens have been harmed in the making of this story. Only slightly inconvenienced. Story 3. My idiot racist neighbors and the petty revenge before we moved. Someone in another sub suggested I post here. Hopefully my story belongs here? On mobile, so sorry for formatting. We once had neighbors that from the day we moved in, absolutely hated us. We never even met them, but they made our lives hell in every way they could. We had moved to that area, putting my grad school big life plans on hold to look after my mill who had stage 4 cancer, so it was already a crappy reason to move and we hated the area. Rural California is very yaha in a bad way, if you know what I mean. The neighbors were garbage people and just awful to us. They never did anything illegal per se, but every petty thing you can think of to make our lives shitty, they did. For example, our water hose was on their lawn after I watered my roses by about 2 inches. It was coiled mostly on our side, but I wasn't done watering and just stepped into the house for a few minutes for a lunch break. While I was inside, they cut the 2 inches off it that was on their property and threw it in our yard but left the rest of the hose that was on our side. Absurdly petty. They had never even met us or spoken to us. Finally, after about 2 years of this, I was talking with my across-the-street neighbor about it and she told me they were treating us that way because they thought we were illegals. I'm Native American and my spouse is Hispanic, but they thought we were both Mexican. I asked he why they thought we were from Mexico and she said before we moved in, some of our forwarded mail accidentally ended up in their box and it had your Mexican address on it. New Mexico, we are from New Mexico. These idiot racists thought we bought a home in an upscale neighborhood in coastal California with cash and we came straight from Mexico to do it, so we must be part of a cartel and here illegally. They had concocted this whole narcos scenario because my husband's last name is Lovato, it's not but a similar old Hispanic last name widely used. We are darker than they deemed appropriate, we bought our house with cash, we had sold our starter house, we put years of back-breaking work into renovating and made a killing on it. And they didn't know New Mexico is a fucking US state. It was all so absurd. Don't worry, the story has a happy ending. When we moved out after my mill passed, I wrote them a long letter telling them how embarrassingly stupid they are. I'm native, so I was sure to tell them they were the ones trespassing on my land, gained illegally by their government, and how they were giant assholes for making what was already a hard time on my husband, who was dealing with the slow death of his mother, a highly respected physician in the area, so yet, not an illegal cartel member, an even worse time, so I hope they're proud of themselves. Then we stole their cat. About the cat, they neglected him and left him outside covered in fleas and fending for himself day and night, in the terrible heat of summer without water and in the freezing cold of winter without shelter. The cat had already moved in with us because we actually cared for it and we took care of his medical needs. In my book, you treat your cat like crap and you didn't microchip him? He's mine. So. One good thing came from our time there and he's napping in the windowsill right now. We named him Flavio after Flavion de Santiago, the famous Mexican cartel drug lord. Fuck racists. TL, DR, we had idiot racist nightmare neighbors, so we stole their cat. Edit, so sorry I forgot to pay cat tax. I hope this works. I'm not good at linking images, Flavio aka Flavs. Edit 2 to clear some confusion up. I don't think they honestly thought we were Mexican cartel because that's just too stupid, but maybe I'm giving them more credit than I should. What they told my neighbor was something like, I bet they're part of a cartel or something. We looked up their house on public records and they paid cash for it? And with their last name and being from south of the border and all. Definitely illegals. She said. They went on to say how sketchy we looked. We look like normal Gen Xers, not really sure what she meant by that, but I can guess. I know it's per SE. Autocorrect screwed me and I didn't catch it in the reread before I posted. I just left it because it's not a big deal, you know what I meant. Please stop trying to correct me. Autocorrect gets us all at some point. More about the kitty. For a long time we thought he was stray. We asked our other neighbors, everyone else around us was pretty welcoming and very nice, if anyone knew whose cat it was. They all said they didn't know, but 2 people we talked to thought he was left by the previous owners of our home. After a little while of watching him seem to be neglected, hoping someone would take care of him, we started helping him in little ways like giving him flea drops, leaving water out for him, and letting him in our garage when the weather was terrible. A little later on, we got him a heated bed in there for winter and started making him come inside every night. He used to get in terrible fights at night and was always banged up. He was very thin, so eventually we started feeding him as well. Then he got in a terrible scrap and had a nasty gash along his back. It was swollen and very painful looking, so we took him to the vet to get treated. We had him scanned for a chip, and when one didn't come up, we figured he was now ours. We moved him inside the house while he was on antibiotics and recovered. Still fearing he was just very lost and maybe had a home somewhere, we checked all the lost pet bulletins in our area and put found pet ones up of our own. A month later and still nothing, so we had him chipped to us. It wasn't until a few years later, right before we moved away, we were talking with our same neighbor and she said, "You know, the Smiths, not their real name, told me you stole their cat." I told them no one knew he was their cat, and if they wanted him back, all they had to do was ask you guys at any time, and that you are very nice people. She said they just snickered at the prospect and walked away. So fuck him, he's our cat now. And our new neighbors who love him dearly and treat him like the king he is. They treated him like shit, they treated us like shit, we took their cat and never looked back. Edit 3 because this wasn't long enough. Some people keep saying I should have just talked directly with my neighbors. Others are focused on them cutting my hose and saying that is property damage and I should have reported them. I'll address the first two topics, but I honestly don't care if some people think my story isn't true. I envy the sheltered and privileged lives they live where systemic racism and illogical leaps based on that racism is so out there of a concept, it must be fake, like birthers aren't a thing and people don't get fatally shot for just turning around in someone's driveway. People keep focusing on the hose they cut, which is just the tip of the iceberg of petty shitty things they did to us. There's another great example to follow, saying we should have called the cops for property damage. We were supporting a dying parent, watching as she deteriorated painfully every day. The last thing we had bandwidth for was escalating a petty war with sneaky nincompoop racists that had nothing better to do than make our lives even shittier. After I found out why they didn't like us, I wrote them a long letter as a peace offering in hopes the shitty behavior could be stopped. We didn't even have aspersions of a cordial relationship, a silent, neutral one would have sufficed. In it, I outlined where we are from and why we were living there. I didn't feel the need to tell them how we bought our house with cash because seriously, people buy homes outright for lots of reasons, mostly non-cartel related, so I didn't think it was relevant. I told them we are very nice people and good neighbors. If they'd just please consider not treating us property so badly, we could ignore each other and both be happy. Crickets. So put another copy of the letter in their mailbox 2 weeks later, just in case they didn't see the first one for whatever reason. A few days later, there's a knock on our door and it's the police. They said they had a complaint that we were stealing other people's mail and messing with our neighbor's mailbox. We were floored. I told them I know exactly who called them and explained the situation, even showing them a copy of the letter I sent twice. They weren't concerned and just told us it's best to not try and make peace, just ignore them the best we can. They suggested we put up security cameras so the neighbors can't accuse us of anything in the future and went on their way. The cops don't care about a cut hose. Or someone messing with mailboxes. We put up a few cameras for our own safety and that's all we had energy for. So yes, I tried to reach out pretty early on. No, we weren't going to call the cops for property damage for the water hose, because cancer. If they had damaged our cars or broken a window or something outright destructive, then sure, we absolutely would have. But a bunch of petty, inconvenient instances of shitty neighboring wasn't worth escalating to us. That's all for today. Please don't forget to like and subscribe.